I am Camilla Drayton, a 29 years old girl. I work as a digital product manager in Santa Barbara, California, and a few months ago, I was finally feeling like my life was on track. I had just sold an app I co-developed for a seven-figure buyout. It was supposed to be the start of everything. But what happened with my sister nearly shattered my belief in family forever. The last day I felt safe, the sun was pouring into my kitchen like honey. I had one sock on, coffee cooling on the marble counter, my phone face down beside me. I remember the way the ocean air drifted in through the open window, salty and faintly sweet with lavender from my potted herbs. My feet were cold on the hardwood, but it didn't matter, I was humming. I was light. I had everything. Or I thought I did. My bank app was supposed to be just a routine glance, a quiet sort of satisfaction. I just returned from a wellness retreat in Sedona, unplugged for 5 days. No screens, no notifications, just journaling, yoga, stargazing. I'd come back centered, or at least, lighter. So when I tapped open the app and saw the balance, I blinked like something was wrong with my vision. $11.74. I stared at it, refreshed the app, closed it, reopened. Still there. Still empty. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling off a cliff. There should have been at least $390,000 in there. That was my buyout money. Half from the acquisition, the other half still pending in escrow, but this account was supposed to be secure, liquid, untouched. My hands began to tremble. I tapped the View Activity tab, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. $25,000, outgoing wire transfer. $12,000, OCC to external account. $6,500, cashier's check issued. $40,000, mobile transfer to R. Drayton. Again and again. My mouth went dry, the name, my sister's name, it was right there, not once, not twice, but dozens of times. My body went still, like my soul had stopped mid-breath. It felt like betrayal crept through my skin in slow motion, not a sharp stab, but a deep surgical wound being carved open without anesthesia. Riley. I stared at her name on the screen like it was some cruel glitch, a ghostly mislabel. There was no way. Except there was. She knew my old passwords, we, grown up sharing everything, beds, secrets, pain, and she always said I was too predictable. You still use the same dog's name from when we were kids, she teased once when I forgot to reset my Netflix password. I thought I had changed everything. But maybe I'd missed something, or maybe she'd been watching. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the counter, chest heaving. Riley. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Our last text exchange had been about a rent payment she said she was a little short on. I'd sent her $1,200, no questions asked. But this wasn't need. This was a heist. My phone buzzed, a new notification from Instagram. I swiped it open without thinking, and there it was. A photo Riley had posted. Her in oversized sunglasses lounging beside a pool at a luxury desert resort. Palm trees, private cabana, 2 drinks on the table, both with metal straws. Her caption read, "Manifesting and finally getting what I deserve." My fingers went numb, I zoomed in. She was wearing Chanel slides. In the background, a white Jeep. My gut twisted, the same Jeep she once said she wanted if she ever got lucky. I scrolled back through her feed. Suddenly, every post, every luxury shot, every glittering selfie, every designer handbag was a punch to the chest. She had been using my money. My money. I barely remember making the call to the bank's fraud department. My voice was so soft it cracked. I gave them everything, my account info, my suspicions, Riley's name, my digital footprint. They confirmed multiple logins from a Bakersfield IP. My sister lived in Bakersfield. I sank onto the floor, the cold tile pressing against my knees, and I sobbed. Not because of the money. Because I knew in my bones, in that silent space between thought and knowing, that this wasn't a mistake. She had done it. She had betrayed me. And she hadn't even tried to hide it. Later that night, I tried calling her 3 times. No answer. The 4th time she picked up. Her voice was calm, disinterested. "Hey. I couldn't breathe, you took my money." Silence. Then a soft chuckle, so you finally noticed. The sound of it, her laugh, it knocked the wind from my chest. Cold, flat, like I was just another idiot who got played. I trusted you, I whispered. She sighed like I was overreacting. Cam, you act like I robbed a bank. I just borrowed it. God, you've always been so dramatic. My vision blurred. I don't remember much after that, just her voice growing sharper, annoyed, me crying, pleading, screaming. She said I owed her, that I never really helped her, and that some of us don't get angel investors to hold our hand through life. I said I was going to the police. She said, do it, let's see what happens when people find out who you really are. And then she hung up. Just like that. The silence that followed was louder than any fight. I sat on the floor until the sky turned dark, until my bones ached, until the only sound in the apartment was the hollow hum of the fridge and the fatting echo of her voice in my ears. That night I froze every account. I contacted an attorney. And for the first time in my life, I started building walls against the person I once swore I'd never turn my back on. Because love doesn't mean surrender. And family doesn't mean you let someone light your life on fire just because they know how to use your matches. The day after I froze my accounts, I woke up with the kind of exhaustion that clings to your skin. I'd barely slept. My mind had run endless laps around Riley's voice, her laugh, that awful calmness when she said, "So you finally noticed." I sat on the edge of my bed, the morning sun bleeding through the blinds, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly alone. It's strange how betrayal rearranges your body. Your bones feel different. Breathing becomes effort. Even your heartbeat feels like it belongs to someone else. I moved in a daze, brushing my teeth, pouring coffee, forgetting to drink it. Everything was stiff and mechanical, like I was inside someone else's morning routine. Brandon, the attorney I'd found after a panicked spiral of late-night Google searches, met me in a quiet office downtown. He was mid-30s, soft-spoken, but with eyes that didn't flinch. I appreciated that. I needed someone who wouldn't talk to me like I was fragile porcelain. I handed him a folder, screenshots, bank statements, Riley's Instagram posts, even a photo of the white Jeep. He flipped through everything silently. The only sound was the soft whisper of pages and the muted tick of a wall clock behind him. Finally, he looked up. "She didn't just take your money," he said, voice even. "She left a trail a mile wide." He explained what we were dealing with: wire fraud, identity theft, unauthorized access, grand larceny. My hands were sweating against the cool leather of his office chair. I nodded, barely able to meet his eyes. "I don't want to ruin her life," I said, and my voice cracked. Brandon tilted his head slightly. "She already made that choice for you." Those words hit hard, because somewhere deep down, a part of me still believed I was responsible for protecting her. That old wiring, the big sister reflex, it didn't die easily, but I was beginning to see it for what it was. An old promise Riley never made back. When I got home that afternoon, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked back. Old photos, videos, messages. There was one from Christmas 3 years ago. Riley had come to Santa Barbara for the first time. We wore matching flannel pajamas and made sugar cookies like we were kids again. She burned half the batch and blamed the oven. We laughed so hard I cried. I remember thinking, this is what healing feels like. It was a lie. She had smiled in my kitchen, slept in my guest room, used my shampoo, and slowly built the story in her head that I owed her something. I closed the laptop. The grief wasn't sharp anymore. It was slow and deep and endless, like water rising around me inch by inch. That evening, I received a message from Riley. "So it's like that." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a challenge. I didn't respond. The next day, she went public. Her first TikTok was almost impressive in its performance. She was in her car, eyes red, shaky voice, soft filter smoothing her skin into porcelain. She looked devastated. "I didn't want to do this, but my sister's trying to destroy me. She's got money, lawyers, and a perfect little life. I made a mistake, one mistake, and now she's trying to ruin me." She never mentioned the dollar amount. Never said she used my login. Never showed the Jeep or the resort or the bags. Just tearful vulnerability and vague insinuations. The internet ate it up. Comments flooded in. Money changes people. This is so heartbreaking. Your sister sounds cold AF. Sue her back. I sat there, my phone screen glowing like a wound, reading every line as if they were being carved into my skin. And then I did something I didn't think I had the strength to do. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Wow, bold of you to call after what you've started, she said flatly. My throat tightened. I didn't start anything, you did. You could have kept this private. You could have not robbed me. The silence that followed was long and thick. I heard her exhale that same bitter breath she used to make when she didn't want to admit she was wrong. You always thought you were better than me, she said. You don't even realize how you made me feel all those years. What does that have to do with you stealing my money? You made me feel small, like I was your charity case. You got out, you made it. I stayed behind with Mom and the wreckage. Her voice was trembling now and I could hear the edge of tears, but I didn't feel sorry, not this time. You could have asked for help, I said quietly. I didn't want help, I wanted to matter, I wanted to win for once. That broke something in me. Because she didn't just want a piece of my life, she wanted the whole thing, and she believed she could take it without consequence. I'm pressing charges, I said. I already hired the attorney. She didn't scream, she didn't plead. She just said, then I hope you're ready, because I've got stories too. And she hung up. That night, I froze her out of everything. Joint accounts, emergency contacts, shared Dropbox folders, even the photo album we used to update for Mom. One by one, I took down the bridges. Because I finally understood. She wasn't my sister anymore. She was someone who looked like her. Someone who wore her face and spoke with her voice, but moved through the world with a blade in her hand and my name on her list. I stood in front of the mirror watching my own reflection, eyes rimmed with red, shoulders hunched from weeks of tension. And I said aloud, just to hear it outside my head. She doesn't get to write the story. Then I turned off the light and let the darkness swallow the girl who used to think love could fix everything. After I froze her out, Riley went silent. Not for days, for weeks. No calls, no texts, no cryptic posts, nothing. It should have felt like peace, like the eye of the storm. But instead, it felt like walking through a minefield barefoot, knowing any step could be the one that explodes. I couldn't sleep, not really. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling fan turning overhead, the soft hum of its motor the only sound in the room, and feel the weight of her silence like a scream in my bones. I started locking everything. Not just doors and accounts, but emotions, memories, soft spots. I hardened in places I didn't even know were soft. I became someone who double-checked every password, who paused before sending a single text, who no longer gave the benefit of the doubt, not to anyone. Because if Raleigh could do this, anyone could. The first legal action was the cease and desist from her attorney, delivered to my condo building by courier, crisp envelope, elegant letterhead. Inside, a 3-page letter accusing me of defamation, public slander via digital platforms, and emotional damages. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh, it was bitter, dry, the kind of laugh that lives right next to tears. She wasn't just doubling down. She was flipping the entire narrative, painting herself as the injured party, the emotional victim of a sibling vendetta fueled by ego and financial resentment. I forwarded the letter to Brandon, my attorney. He called 5 minutes later. We'll handle this, he said. She's trying to scare you. It worked, but not in the way she probably wanted. Not because I thought I was going to lose legally. I had everything. Receipts, transfers, IP logs, texts. She had dug her own grave and then danced in it. What scared me was how easily she twisted reality. How confidently she turned herself into a martyr. I'd spent years defending her to friends, boyfriends, even therapists. I told people she was just wounded, misunderstood, trying her best. And now I was watching her weaponize every ounce of that grace I had given her into a public performance. Her second TikTok was worse than the first. This time she had props. She held up a stack of papers, probably fake, I couldn't tell, and said, This is how many pages of legal threats I've gotten from my own sister. The comments came in fast. This is so sad. Money changes people, pensive face. Your sister sounds like a narcissist. And there it was again. That old familiar erosion. My name dragged through the dirt while she stood in the spotlight of victimhood, mascara streaking like war paint. I wanted to fight back, I wanted to scream, but Brandon reminded me, don't touch it, don't post, the truth will speak for itself in court. So I swallowed my fire. And it started to burn from the inside. One night, I found myself packing the living room at 2 a.m., barefoot on the cold tile, whispering arguments out loud like I was practicing for a confrontation that would never come. You knew what you were doing. I was the only one who ever showed up for you. Why was I enough to stop you from doing this? I was unraveling. So I started therapy again. Dr. Lang was the same woman I'd seen years ago after my first real heartbreak, the one who told me grief doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it looks like guilt, sometimes like shame, sometimes it looks like you on your kitchen floor convincing yourself it wasn't that bad. She didn't push me. She just asked, when did you first learn it was your job to carry other people's weight? And that question cracked me open. Because I'd always carried Riley. Since we were kids and Mom worked double shifts and Dad was just a voicemail. I packed her lunches, I forged notes when she skipped school, I kept her secrets when they could have hurt us both. And somewhere along the way, I decided that her survival was my responsibility. Even when it came at the cost of my own. Dr. Lang gave me a phrase, learned overfunctioning. People who overfunction in relationships often partner with people who underfunction, and it becomes a loop, she said. The more you carry, the less they learn to walk. So maybe Riley never learned how to walk. Because I never let her fall. Until now. Meanwhile, the case was moving forward. Brandon filed a fraud complaint with supporting documentation. Riley was subpoenaed to produce her bank records. Her lawyer tried to delay, claimed she was experiencing acute emotional trauma. I rolled my eyes so hard it gave me a headache. Brandon just nodded. Delays don't stop the inevitable. She's cornered, she knows it. But being right didn't feel like winning. It felt like bleeding slower. I started avoiding Instagram, deleted TikTok, shut off my DMs. I'd get texts from mutual friends. Is it true what she's saying? Why don't you just talk it out? You used to be so close. And that was the knife twist. Because used to be haunted me. Raleigh wasn't a stranger. She was the girl I braided hair with under cheap ceiling fans. The girl I cried next to in our twin bed when Mom didn't come home until after midnight. The girl I promised I'd protect, even if no one else did. And now, she was a stranger who wore her past like armor and used our pain as content. One morning, I walked into my favorite coffee shop, the kind with exposed brick walls and an espresso machine that sounded like a train, and the barista, Devin, smiled and asked how I was doing. And I burst into tears. Right there in front of strangers. I don't remember what I said, just that my hands were shaking and I felt like my skin didn't fit right, like nothing was real anymore. Devin walked around the counter and handed me a pastry on the house. He said people suck sometimes, but they don't get to take everything. And I held onto that sentence like a lifeline. Because Riley had taken so much. But she didn't get to take everything. Not my future, not my name, not the truth. The silence between us had become a weapon. But so had my voice. And I was done whispering. The morning of the pretrial conference, I woke up before my alarm. Not from nerves, I had passed the nervous phase weeks ago. This was something colder, deeper. Like I had finally reached the bottom of whatever emotional pit I'd been tumbling through since that first phone call with Riley. I wasn't falling anymore. Now I was standing in the wreckage. The mirror reflected a version of me I hadn't seen before. My eyes were a little darker, my jaw a little tighter, and there was a stillness in my face that hadn't been there before, not calm, but controlled. Not peace, but resolve. I wore a black blazer, simple, strong, no jewelry, no perfume, no softness. Brandon picked me up in silence. The car ride to the courthouse was quiet, save for the occasional buzz of his phone. I clutched a notepad I didn't need and reread my statement until the words blurred. I didn't need to testify yet, this was just procedural. But the prosecutor had requested I attend. A show of unity, of seriousness. And deep down, maybe they wanted me to see her again, to look into the eyes of the woman who nearly hollowed me out and remember why we were here. She arrived 10 minutes late. Riley stepped into the courtroom in a fitted beige dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked like she wanted to seem put together, maybe even remorseful, but there was something performative about it, like she was playing a role she hadn't rehearsed well enough. She didn't look at me, and I didn't look away. The judge, a different one this time, was all business. He listed the charges, read aloud the summary of the complaint: identity theft, fraudulent access, transfer of funds with malicious intent, unauthorized financial gain. Riley's attorney requested leniency, cited mental health stress, family trauma, confusion during the transactions. But Brandon had brought everything. The PayPal memo, the Instagram photos, the text messages, the bank logs. He handed over a document Riley had digitally signed to disable my two-factor authentication, using my birthday and our childhood dog's name to answer the security questions. When the judge asked if the defense would dispute the digital trail, her attorney hesitated. And Riley, she finally looked at me. Not angry, not smug. Just tired. And for the first time since this began, I saw her clearly, not as my sister, not as my betrayer, but as a woman who had built her entire life around resentment. And when it all came crashing down, she didn't know how to survive without someone else's foundation to stand on. The court moved to the next phase, formal trial proceedings. No deal, no diversion program, no settlement. The DA was pursuing full charges. As we filed out of the room, Riley brushed past me. Her perfume, vanilla and something citrusy, hit me like a punch of memory. "Camilla," she said quietly. I turned slowly, carefully. She stood a foot away from me, eyes red but dry, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought you'd actually do it." And I said, "That's the problem." She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg, but I walked away before she could say anything else. Because it wasn't my job to hear her out anymore. Outside, the sky was bright, painfully so. Blue like possibility, like oxygen, like a world where people survive things they never thought they could. Brandon asked if I wanted to get coffee. I said no. I went home, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the middle of my living room in complete silence. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened the envelope. Riley's letter. I'd tucked it away after the first paragraph, too angry to finish it. But now I read every word. Her handwriting was uneven, rushed. She talked about the weight of growing up in a house where love was rationed like food, how she watched me succeed and convinced herself I was leaving her behind, how she knew, even while doing it, that she was ruining us, but she didn't stop. And then she wrote this. "I thought stealing from you would make me feel powerful, but it only reminded me how small I've always felt." She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't expect anything. She just gave me truth. And even though it didn't erase what she did, it gave me something I hadn't expected to get again. Her voice. Real, unfiltered, not curated for sympathy. Just raw. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because healing doesn't come when someone else wants it to. It comes when you decide to stop building your house on broken glass. That night I lit a candle. I sat on the floor of my living room, the letter beside me, and whispered her name. Not in anger, not in pain, but in remembrance. Of who she was, of who I was, and of what we both had to burn to become who we are now. 2 weeks before the trial, I got a call from my mother. Not a text, not a vague voicemail. A real call. I stared at her name on my screen for a full minute before answering, heart pounding so hard it made my ribs ache. We hadn't spoken in over 4 months, not since she asked me not to ruin Riley's life with the charges. "Camilla," she said softly. Her voice hadn't changed, still low, still slow, still weighted with that guilt-laced kindness that always made me feel like a child again. Hi, I said barely above a whisper. There was a pause long enough to make me think she might hang up. Then she asked me to testify for her. The words landed with a sickening thud. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. And are you going to? She hesitated. Mom, I don't know. My throat tightened. You don't know if you're going to defend the daughter who stole everything from me. She exhaled sharply. She says you're trying to destroy her, that you're making an example out of her. She took $390,000, I snapped, and then mocked me publicly while doing it. I know, she whispered, I know, but she's still. Don't say it, I warned. She's still your sister. That word didn't mean what it used to. It wasn't warmth or safety. It wasn't sleepovers and inside jokes. It was a weight, a curse, a noose she tied around my neck while smiling for selfies. I stood up, packing, holding the phone tight to my ear. She committed a felony, multiple. She's lost everything, Camilla. I stopped moving. And I said something I'd never said to my mother, not even as a teenager during our worst fights. So did I. There was silence, long, breathless. I heard her sniffle, maybe she was crying, maybe she was. I'm sorry, she finally said. For her. For everything. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say anything. I just hung up. The trial was set for March 7th. Santa Barbara County Superior Court, Department 5. The courthouse was busier this time, more people in suits, more tension in the air. Brandon had briefed me on everything, seating, procedure, what to expect when I took the stand. But nothing prepared me for the sight of Riley walking in, flanked by her attorney, wearing a navy blue suit and flats, the same ones I helped her pick out 2 years ago before a job interview she never showed up for. She avoided my gaze. The courtroom filled, the bailiff called order, and then the moment. The judge asked both sides to confirm readiness. The trial began. Opening statements were painful. Riley's lawyer framed her as a confused, desperate woman who misunderstood access and made mistakes out of fear. He called me financially privileged and described my actions as punitive, not protective. Brandon countered with calm precision, this is not about sibling rivalry. It is about unauthorized access, manipulation, and digital theft amounting to nearly $400,000. Then came the evidence. The bank statements. The logins from her device. The PayPal note to her boyfriend. The wire transfers labeled reimbursement, gift, mine now. Every dollar, every date. I watched Riley squirm in her seat, her jaw tight, her fingers curled against the armrest. When I took the stand, my hands didn't shake. I told the truth. About the moment I opened my bank app and saw $11.74. About the call, her laugh, her apathy. About the Instagram posts, the TikToks, the DMs from strangers telling me I was a monster. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just let the facts stand on their own. And they did. Riley's defense tried to poke holes. Asked why I hadn't cut her off years ago. Why I sent her money at all. Why I didn't change my password sooner. As if kindness was a weakness, as if generosity was a liability. I held firm. I looked at the jury, 3 women, 4 men, all of them stone-faced, and said, trust doesn't come with a contract. She knew what she was doing. She didn't take a loan, she took advantage. When Riley testified, her voice cracked before she even started. She said she felt abandoned. That I made it out while she drowned. She said I used money as a weapon and always acted like a savior. Then she looked directly at me and said, I hated you for having the life I wanted. I didn't flinch. Because that wasn't new. I'd been living with her resentment like background noise for years. She just finally gave it a microphone. Closing arguments were swift. Brandon reminded the jury that this wasn't about emotion, it was about facts, about digital footprints, about clear and willful theft. The defense begged for mercy, for understanding, for context. And then the wait. 2 hours later, the jury returned. Guilty. On all counts. Wire fraud, identity theft, grand theft by access. The judge ordered restitution, probation, and 6 months in a low-security women's facility. I watched Riley as the verdict was read. She didn't cry. She just sat there, shoulders hunched, eyes wide and glassy. Like she couldn't believe I had actually followed through. As if I was still supposed to protect her from herself. As if being family gave her immunity. It didn't. Not anymore. Outside the courthouse, Brandon offered to call me a car. I shook my head. I need to walk. And I did. 3 miles through the heart of the city, the sun warm on my face, the wind in my hair, my heels clacking on the sidewalk like punctuation marks on a news story. I wasn't happy. But I wasn't broken. And that felt like a beginning. The day after the verdict, I stayed in bed until almost noon. Not asleep, just still. The curtains were drawn, the sheets tangled around my legs, my phone buried beneath a pillow. Outside, Santa Barbara was glowing. One of those rare spring mornings where the air feels almost too perfect, like it's trying to convince you that life keeps going. But mine didn't feel like it had restarted. It felt suspended. The trial was over, the sentence had been handed down. Riley was officially a convicted felon. I had won on paper, on principle. But inside, I just felt empty. I'd spent so long bracing for the blow that now, with the impact past, I wasn't sure what to do with my body. My heart was still holding tension like a muscle that forgot how to relax. I finally got up around noon, made tea, watched the kettle boil like it might give me answers. There were emails waiting, messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. One from an old coworker who wrote, "Saw what happened, you're strong." One from a college friend, "I don't know how you did it, that couldn't have been easy." Even one from Heather, the woman who sent me the group chat screenshot offering to talk or meet up if I ever needed company. They were kind, supportive. But they didn't really know. No one knew what it felt like to survive a betrayal so intimate it rewrote your memories. Because that's what it did, it made me question all of it. Was Riley ever really close to me? Were our sleepovers and sister secrets real? Or were they always colored by jealousy I couldn't see? Was I just her safety net from the start? And if that was true, had I ever had a sister at all? That night, I went into the closet and pulled down the old box. The one I'd hidden on the top shelf, out of reach, out of mind. Inside were photos, letters, cards, a Polaroid of us at Disneyland in 2006. A birthday card she made me in high school with hand-drawn stars and a note that read, "You're the only reason I'm still standing." And the bracelet. The charm bracelet I gave her when she graduated 8th grade. "Brave," it said. I turned it over in my hand and felt my throat tight. Not from sorrow. From mourning. Because this was a kind of death, wasn't it? Not the end of a life, but the end of a story. The one I'd been telling myself since I was old enough to believe family meant forever. I drove to the beach just after sunset. Parked the car, walked barefoot across the cool sand. The tide was low, the sky painted with the last violet streaks of twilight. I stood ankle deep in the water and pulled the bracelet from my pocket. And I said goodbye. Not out loud, not for anyone else, just in my heart. Goodbye to the sister I loved. Goodbye to the little girl who needed me. Goodbye to the guilt. I didn't throw the bracelet into the ocean, that felt too final, too cruel. I kept it. But I placed it in a new box when I got home. Not the old one where all the memories lived. A new one. Clean, separate. Because I wasn't erasing her. I was compartmentalizing her. And I had to, if I was ever going to get my life back. The next week I took time off work. I deleted TikTok, logged out of Instagram, canceled every dinner I didn't want to attend and every obligation I'd been clinging to just to feel normal. I let myself be undone. And in that undoing, I started to breathe again. I picked up my sketchpad. I hadn't drawn in years, not since my first app took off and time became a currency I never had enough of. But that week, I filled 4 pages with nothing but lines, broken, jagged, abstract. And on the 5th, I drew 2 girls sitting on a rooftop under stars. They weren't smiling, but they were holding hands. And even though I knew they'd let go someday, I let them stay like that on the page. That was enough. By mid-April, my life had entered a strange quiet. Not peace exactly, more like the silence after an earthquake when everything's still standing but nothing feels quite the same. I could go a full day now without thinking about Riley. That had once seemed impossible. But it was happening like the way a wound stops aching before you even realize it's healed. I'd started working again, not full-time, just easing in. A new project with a small team of developers I trusted. We were building a mindfulness app for burnout recovery, and there was something poetic in that, I guess. Coding a digital space for people to breathe when I'd only just learned how to breathe again myself. One afternoon, I went to the post office to pick up a package. There was an envelope slipped into my box, no return address. Just my name scrawled in the sharp, slanted writing I knew better than my own. Riley. I stood in the corner of the lobby and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a check. $8,241.68. The first restitution payment. Alongside it a note. Not long, not emotional, just this. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know I'm trying. For once, I'm trying without expecting anything back. I stood there for a long time, staring at those words. They didn't mean forgiveness. But they meant something. She was keeping her end of the sentence. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and watched the city breathe, streetlights blinking on one by one, cars humming down the 101, waves in the distance curling over each other in soft, moonlit applause. And I thought about her. I didn't miss her. But I didn't hate her either. I'd made my peace with what she did, not because it was okay, but because I'd stopped trying to carry it. My therapist, Dr. Lang, called it grief closure. Not healing, not resolution. Just knowing the shape of what you lost and learning to live around it. In May, I got another message. This time from a mutual friend, someone we'd both known in high school, who'd gone radio silent during the chaos. She said, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I believed her. I didn't know everything. I do now. She attached a screenshot. Riley had posted a private message on her close friend's Instagram story. I did things I can't undo. Doesn't matter if I was hurting. I hurt her more. I'll never get her back, but I'll spend the rest of my life paying for it. I read it twice. Then I put my phone down and looked out the window. The truth had finally broken through. Not to the whole world, not to strangers on TikTok, but to the people who mattered. It didn't erase what happened. But it closed a door I'd been standing in front of for far too long. Later that week, I visited my mother. We sat on her porch drinking tea, watching her garden bloom back to life. She didn't bring up the trial. Or Riley. She just said, I'm proud of you. It was the first time I'd heard that in years. We didn't say much else. And maybe that was the point. Not every wound needs words, some just need time, space, sunlight. As the sun dipped below the hills, my mom asked, do you think you'll ever talk to her again? I took a breath. I don't know. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for saying that. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you hand out like candy. It's a door you open when you're ready. And sometimes you never open it at all. And that's okay. It happened on a Tuesday. I was walking back from a late lunch meeting, phone tucked in my bag, sun on my shoulders, mind already thinking about the UX feedback I needed to review that evening. Then her voice. Behind me, soft, hesitant. Cam. My feet stopped before my mind did. I turned. There she was. Riley. Wearing jeans, a gray sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, no filters, no audience, just her. Just the woman I hadn't seen, truly seen, since before the lies, before the trial, before the truth tore us apart. I didn't speak. Neither did she. We stood there for a moment in the middle of State Street, people walking around us like we were ghosts. She looked thinner, not unhealthy, just worn, like life had weathered her. Her eyes didn't shine with spite or performance anymore. They were tired, human. I'm not here to fight, she said, I swear. I still didn't speak. My body was taut, ready to run, but I stayed. She stepped closer, slowly, careful not to scare me off. I saw your name on the advisory board of that women's fund, she said. I wanted to say, that's really cool, I'm glad you're doing that. I swallowed hard. It felt like the smallest olive branch in the world, but somehow it was heavier than anything she'd handed me before. I wasn't sure you'd even stop, she added. I almost didn't, I said. Her mouth twitched almost a smile. That's fair. We stood in silence again. Then she reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I didn't mail this because I didn't think I deserved to send it, but I wrote it anyway. She held it out. I didn't take it. Not yet. She didn't push. I'm in therapy now, she said. Court-ordered at first, but I kept going after. It's the first time I've ever actually said things out loud. The real stuff. My arms stayed crossed over my chest, but my heart softened just slightly. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said. I don't even expect you to read the letter. I wanted to say thank you. That caught me off guard. Thank you, I repeated. For stopping me, she said, for doing what no one else ever had the guts to do. She took a shaky breath. I hated you for it. I wanted to destroy you for it, but you saved me. I see that now. A breeze blew through the street. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime clinked against a storefront awning. And in that moment, I saw her again. Not the thief, not the liar, not even the sister. Just a woman. Flawed, wrecked, trying. I reached out and took the letter. Thank you for not making this about you, I said. She blinked. That's new, she said. I'm new, I replied. She nodded slowly, then carefully stepped back. I'm not gonna call or text or show up. This is the last thing I promise. After this, it's up to you. Then she turned and walked away. And I stood there, paper in hand, watching the girl who once slept next to me in a twin bed with glow-in-the-dark stars above us vanish into the afternoon crowd. I didn't read the letter right away. I waited. 2 days later, I opened it. It was short. No excuses. Just truth. She wrote, I ruined us because I didn't believe I was worth saving. You did what I couldn't. You let go of me, and somehow that's the first time I ever felt loved without condition. You were never my villain. I just wasn't ready to stop being my own. I cried. For the first time since the verdict, I sobbed so hard my whole body shook. Not because it changed anything, not because it fixed what was broken, but because it finally released what I'd been holding in. The weight of trying to fix her. The shame of not being able to. The guilt of walking away. It wasn't absolution, but it was a kind of peace. One I never thought I'd get. And maybe that was enough. It's been 11 months since the trial. Riley and I haven't spoken since that day on State Street. She never called, never texted, I never wrote back. Her letter sits in the top drawer of my desk, folded into a neat little square beside the bracelet I gave her years ago, brave, still etched in silver. Some days I still reach for that drawer. Not to revisit pain. Just to remind myself of the woman I used to be. The one who believed love alone could hold two people together even as they pulled each other apart. I'm not her anymore. And I've stopped mourning her. This morning, I walked the bluff trail above Butterfly Beach, early enough that the mist hadn't burned off yet. The air was cool and wet against my cheeks, and the light came in soft pink layers bleeding over the hills like a secret. I walked without music, without distraction. And for the first time in what feels like years, I wasn't bracing for the past to grab me. I was just there. Breathing. Existing. Whole. In the last few months, I've said yes to things I would have once avoided. I started teaching a weekend coding class for women returning to the workforce after domestic financial abuse. I speak openly about what happened, not as a victim, but as someone who knows how it feels to lose yourself trying to save someone else. I also started drawing again, nothing fancy, just lines, patterns, portraits. Sometimes I draw two girls, sometimes just one. But every time I leave space in the image, a gap, a breath, a silence. A place where healing can happen. My therapist says that grief doesn't leave. It shifts. Like light through water, refracted, softened, made beautiful in its distortion. I've learned to stop waiting for closure like it's a letter in the mail. Closure, it turns out, is a choice. A quiet one. A gentle one. It's walking away without burning the bridge, but also without hoping anyone follows you across it. I know where Riley is now. She's in Modesto working the night shift at a shipping warehouse. She's made 6 restitution payments so far, on time, no notes, no messages. I don't know if she's happy. I don't know if she ever thinks about me. But I've stopped needing to know. Because this life, the one I'm rebuilding, piece by piece, breath by breath, doesn't revolve around who I lost. It revolves around who I refuse to become. I still believe in love. But now I know that love isn't about sacrifice without limits. It's about boundaries. It's about truth. And it's about walking away when someone hands you a match and begs you to burn yourself for their warmth. I'm Camilla Drayton. I'm 29 years old. And my sister stole $390,000 from me. But what she couldn't steal, what no one can, is who I became after the fire.